Hi, my name is Don White. Today's lesson is on how you can use hypersprints to accelerate learning and grow empathy on product teams and squads. These are practices that I've used as a DevOps Dojo sensei. Before we dive into the lesson, I want to walk you through doing Agile versus being Agile. Now, it's been my experience when teams are just doing Agile, they're really just going through the motions. They may be doing inspect and adapt events, but they don't truly understand why. More importantly, they don't understand how it is so beneficial to them. This lesson is for all those product teams and product organizations who want to take it to the next level. They want to be agile. And to be agile, you truly value feedback. In this lesson, you will learn some new ways to get that really valuable feedback that lets you build empathy on your product teams. We will first talk about delayed versus regular feedback, and then we will jump into this new practice called a hyper sprint. We will then talk about how you can use demonstrations during these hyper sprints to really build that empathy for the people who your teams are developing your solutions for. Okay, let's get started with delayed versus regular feedback. As you can see on this slide, the longer product teams delay feedback from the people who they are developing their solutions for, that would be external customers and internal end users, the more risk, rework, and waste go up. And you can see it's an actual linear relationship. And the reason for that is the larger the effort, the more assumptions that a team can build into what they're developing. And the more assumptions that are in a development effort, the more likely an assumption is wrong. And sometimes a wrong assumption can have a cascading effect, which really adds to that risk, rework, and waste. A better way forward is to get regular feedback from incremental delivery. With incremental delivery, you can minimize assumptions that you put in each of your increments. And it also allows you to validate critical assumptions early. So the next time you deliver, you can apply what you learned to the next increment. Note that the orange line starts on the horizontal axis, and that's because feedback was actually received. And you'll notice also how the slope of that line goes down, and that's because learning from that feedback was then applied to that subsequent increment. This continues, and you can notice how risk, rework, and waste actually goes down. Now that you can see the benefits of regular feedback, we can talk about hypersprints. A hypersprint is a coaching practice I used when coaching short, 6-week immersive DevOps dojo engagements. They were an attempt to move teams and squads closer to delivering code to production once per day per developer, which was a goal of DevOps. However, the teams or the squad are not required to adopt hypersprints after the coaching engagement. Many of my teams did adopt hypersprints after they experienced the benefits of that faster feedback. Hypersprints are a way to lean into that regular feedback and accelerate that incremental learning. To do a hypersprint, you do 2 sprints per week versus a 2-week sprint. Now talk about accelerated learning. Let's compare a hypersprint to a normal 2-week sprint. On the left-hand side, you see the feedback loops you get when you're delivering in 2-week sprints. And over to the right, you see the much smaller feedback loops that you get when you're using hypersprints. And note that they're significantly smaller as well. And that is meaningful because when your scope is so much smaller, you're not working with near as much stuff. Therefore, your Scrum meetings don't need to be near as long. They can be significantly shorter. The other thing to keep in mind is the amount of work that you can get realistically accomplished during a hyper sprint. That is normally around 1 to 2 user stories that the team would get completed in a hyper sprint. Demonstrations during these hyper sprints are what we're going to talk about next. They're a way to increase feedback on the actual product teams. And it's been my experience that the more product team members demonstrate, they can grow critical people skills. Developer types tend to want to shy away from doing demonstrations and providing feedback. That's the introvert types. However, the way in which we incorporate these demonstrations during the hyper sprints is a way for them to grow their confidence. Having confidence in their people skills is critical for product teams and squads to grow their empathy for their
customers and end users.
The more team members truly understand the wants and needs of the people who they're developing their solutions for, well, the more likely they will uncover innovations. So demonstrations are a way to innovate. Well, now we'll dive into the different demonstrations that can be done during these hyper sprints. I want to quickly reiterate the fact that hyper sprints are very small in scope, and therefore the amount of time needed to complete the peer demo and the product owner demo does not need to take a long period of time. Typically, those demos can be completed within a half-hour time box. The first demo is a peer demo. And when team members commit to work that they're going to complete in their hyper sprints, they collectively own that work. They'll collaborate to complete that work. They'll look at a user story and dig into the testable acceptance criteria to divvy out the work. They figure out who does what work to complete the user story. And they may break the user story out like this, where a couple team members will tackle the first testable acceptance criteria. Another couple will take the next testable acceptance criteria. And then the remaining folks will grab the rest. On day one in that hyper sprint, each group will write tests and they'll develop their solution for the criteria they agreed to work on. But then day two, first thing in the morning, that's when they do the demonstrations to the rest of the team to get that really critical feedback. They want to validate their assumptions with their peers. They might even figure out a better way to develop the thing that they developed. In addition to validating their assumptions and learning, they are practicing how to do demos and receiving feedback. Their camaraderie grows because they're all in the same boat, learning how to do demonstrations and receive feedback. And they gain empathy for one another's perspective and value each other's opinions. At the end of day two of a hyper sprint, well, that's when they do their next demonstration, and that's their demonstration to the product owner. They basically will take what they learned from one another, develop it, and then at the end of the day two, they will go ahead and they'll demonstrate it to the product owner. Well, that product owner has a unique perspective. They have a closer connection with the stakeholders who they worked with. It's an opportunity for the team to basically do dress rehearsal for that end of the week demo, which we're going to talk about next. So now the team members have got that feedback from the product owner. They have confidence and they're ready to do this end of the week demo where they're demonstrating their completed user stories to the stakeholders. It's important to note that the end of the week demo is 2 hyper sprints worth of work that needs to be demonstrated to the stakeholders. Therefore, the event will be a longer demonstration. and be a little more formal. Now, this is the demo that most people are familiar with in the Scrum framework. This is the golden opportunity to get direct feedback from the
customers and internal end users,
so that they can validate their assumptions about what they developed. If they assumed wrong, this is an opportunity to learn and grow and then course correct. The peer demos and the product owner demos in the 2 hyper sprints leading up to this demo are the new ways that I use to get teams prepared for this very important demo. Because product team members are actually getting feedback directly from
customers and internal end users.
By having the team members get that direct feedback to the product team members can then ask qualifying questions of that feedback. Because they're able to have that two-way communication, the stakeholders are learning as well. They're learning the types of information that team members need in order to deliver
customers and internal end users
value on a regular basis. The more they do that two-way communication, then relationships start to blossom and grow. The more they have that type of interaction. And eventually, empathy emerges. The product team members truly understand the wants and needs of the
customers and internal end users
and figure out innovative ways to solve these problems that the stakeholders really need them to solve. And by the way, the stakeholders may be people from marketing, maybe some folks from compliance.
The most important people to have present at the demo are customers and end users. If they are not present, the demo does not have much value at all.
Management, it's good to have them there so they can kind of watch how the teams are evolving as they interact with the
customers and end users
over time. To summarize what we covered in this lesson, the many benefits of receiving regular feedback, how hypersprints are a way to accelerate opportunities for feedback on product teams or squads, and demonstrations during hypersprints provide even more feedback that leads to growth in important people skills, confidence in these people skills, and empathy. Empathy the team members have for one another, but more importantly, the empathy they gain for the people they develop their solutions for. The more empathy product teams or squads have for the people they develop their solutions for, the more likely they will uncover innovations.